Let's get this out of the way. Yes, I disagree with the episode. No, I am not going to criticize the episode for it. Aside from a few issues I have, I won't be talking about the debate for this review. I already have a detailed breakdown on the debate, so if you want my thoughts on it, go watch that. With that out of the way, let's get started. Out of all the Kickstarter matchups that got revealed, this was easily the one I was most excited for. I love Shigaraki, I love this matchup, and I especially love Mahito. He is the Pookie. Combined with my general love for just everything to do with this matchup, every new announcement for this episode was amazing, from the previews to the VAs to learning Moro was doing the fight, and we got it a day early. It's safe to say that the hype was through the roof, but did the episode live up to said hype? Let's find out. Starting with the analyses as usual, the most standout part here is definitely the editing. DJ did lots of experimenting with his edits this time, and it paid off because these are easily the best looking analyses we've ever had. The manga animations are naturally the star of the show with how cool and fluid they look, the hair edits especially standing out in that regard. But even aside from the phenomenal manga animations, the simpler stuff DJ does like unique text and multi-screen edits look amazing, the text in particular having some especially great moments. But what I probably like most is the coloring done for each analysis. It's a really simple touch, but having Shigaraki's edits be bathed in red while Mahito's are done in a purple helps them feel really unique from each other and gives both a lot cooler look than simple black and white. Moving over to the story and versus coverage, starting with the latter, I do wish some of Shigaraki's feats actually got calculated. It obviously wouldn't matter, but it'd make them look nicer next to Mahito's numerical results. And I also wish I didn't have to see Jogo's bum-ass meteor for the 70th time. But otherwise, it's great. The ability coverage is really good and each one flows really well into the next, while also being paced nicely alongside the story beats. Speaking of which, I do have a few issues with the story coverage, both on Mahito's end. Firstly, I'm not a fan of how late into the analysis Yuji was brought up. I think it would have worked better if he was mentioned towards the start, like how Deku was, to show how Mahito also similarly grew alongside his rival. Secondly, I definitely wish they mentioned Mahito's ending in the manga of becoming a true mirror of death. It's an amazing ending for his character, and I have much preferred they cover it. But aside from those two complaints, legitimately zero issues. The story coverage here is near perfect, and goes over the nuance and themes of society that both have amazingly. Actually getting to hear about Mahito's philosophy and character is such a breath of fresh air after Gojo's analysis had none of that, and Shigaraki's ending is probably in the top 5 of the show with how well it's written. These are just some of my favorite analyses we've ever gotten on the show, maybe even flat out my favorite, since I'm so happy two characters I love got such good treatment. But before we get into the fight, we here at Mahito Glazing Incorporated would like to tell you that if you, yes you, press that funny little red button down there, Master Chief vs. Doomslayer will actually release 30 seconds ago. You can trust us because Mahito has notoriously never lied to anyone ever. Now back to the video. Onto the fight. Similar to the analyses, the most immediately obvious thing here is how good the battle looks. As with most Moro animations, the strongest aspect here is how colorful it is. Every color in this fight just pops out of the screen, from the effects to the lighting. The lighting in this fight is so colorful, it makes every scene look super pretty, starting with a strong blue light in the beginning before getting into the more vivid reds and purples we get by the end. It all looks amazing, and I especially love the heavy purple lighting during the train fight and Domain. Circling back to the effects, while not as great as the lighting due to being more sparse, they still look phenomenal. Shigaraki's radio waves, decay, and his vestige realm all look great, but I think the star of the show here is Mahito's black flashes. They made an amazing first appearance on this show, with the black sparks, cursed energy, and impact frames all looking incredible. Moving on to something that doesn't look as good, Mahito's model. Specifically when he's shirtless in the animation, his model looks pretty off. His arms look super short at times, and his abdomen looks too long at times, but most noticeably, his chest juts out too far, which makes his anatomy look really weird, and his outline look like he has massive man tits, which, hey, I'm not complaining. Wait, I literally am. Moro doesn't often animate typical humans, so while it makes sense these flaws exist, it makes how good the rest looks even more impressive. Aside from shirtless Mahito, the models all look great and are rigged smoothly most times. Ironically, Mahito has the worst and best rigging here, with his fight with the Nomus at the start and his distorted killing form having the best rigging in the fight, the latter especially with the dynamic shots they give the transformation. Shigaraki's rigging is also good. Him staying clothed and not moving much for most of the fight definitely helps with that, but his cape and hair looks really good. Meanwhile, his defense form is done in almost entirely 3D. It not only looks great, but is incorporated really well. In fact, all of the 3D is. Moro does a great job mixing his 3D models with his hand-drawn rigs. The best example of this being that every single hand in this animation is 3D. Which, firstly, thank God, I wouldn't wish drawing Mahito's Domain on anyone. But secondly, is such a unique animation choice, and it works so seamlessly that it's nearly impossible to notice in most cases. Speaking of which, I'd say the Domain is the peak of this fight's already stellar animation quality. The colors look amazing, the 3D hands just look absolutely stunning, and I love the detail of Mahito's Domain colors overtaking the Vestige Realm colors. Branching off the Domain, I love the interactions in this fight, and I'm glad we got so many, thanks in part to the very good setup. Both start off not really taking the fight seriously, but Mahito gets more and more into the fight because of the fun he's having, while Shigaraki takes it more seriously as he gets more annoyed by said fun Mahito is having. It's a super enjoyable dynamic and culminates in their awesome clash of ideals at the end. Mahito is a very philosophical character, so it makes sense they discuss them here, and I love how it's done. Having both characters dissect the other's reason for hating humanity and remarking on its flaws. Not only are the lines just very well written, but what makes it best to me is the hypocritical nature of both dissections. Neither's viewpoint is actually better than the other's, so them hypocritically telling the other to grow up perfectly reflects the childish view both have on the world and society. But while the dialogue is good, the voice acting I'm not as sold on. Tom Schalk is great as usual and gives us a good Shigaraki impression, but I don't think Sean Chiplock was a good pick for Mahito. His impression is far too deep and lacks a lot of the sliminess and energy his deliveries often have, especially if you compare him to the original sub voice. Admittedly, I do think his delivery is good and is a solid example of what I would have liked to see. I also can't blame Sean too much, since some of the fault is definitely on the script for not giving the character more energetic lines. Like, come on, no Black Flash delivery? While on the topic of sound, I'll cover the other two parts of it. First up, the track is pretty good. It's significantly better than our last Japanese track, but I honestly kinda wish it was just an instrumental. Not to say Yeat's vocals are bad, but at most points in the track I think the instrumental just sounds far more interesting and I'd rather it have taken center stage. Secondly, Philip nailed the sound design here. The typical sound design is already good, but all the grotesque sounds are just great and very much help sell the bloody tone the fight is going for. With that, it's time to finally discuss the choreography. My main issue here is it definitely feels like the fight doesn't go far enough in casualties or scale, which limits them a lot in creativity here. Scale isn't as big of an issue since while Shigaraki typically gets high scale, Mahito often fights on lower scales. But the lack of casualties really hurts here. Part of the big appeal of this matchup is how much death and destruction comes with it, and mass amounts of civilian casualties is a staple in both fighting styles, especially Mahito's. Yet in this fight, we get over 100 times less casualties than Gojo vs Makima had. But if you ignore that, this choreography is almost nothing but peak. Sure, I wish they were used more creatively, but Mahito gets to use every one of his abilities besides the summons, and Shigaraki uses pretty much all of the quirks he usually uses. They managed to fit a good amount into this fight, and part of that is definitely due to how well everything flows. Shigaraki uses his hand wave to block body repel long enough to charge his radio wave. Mahito uses the kiss to distract Shigaraki from the clone sneaking up. Shigaraki uses the incoming train to try to force Mahito into a position for decay. Mahito uses the dust from the train in his hands to distract Shigi and prepare a Black Flash, etc, etc. Every move and attack characters do here has a purpose, and that makes the choreography super smooth. The Black Flash moment in particular I think is extremely well done, and it's my favorite part of the fight due to that smooth flow and how good it looks. The transformation fight after that is a very close second though. It abandons the previous ability-centric dynamic to go all in on close quarters combat, and it works amazingly. The cramped train car gives a great claustrophobic feeling to the scene, and I like how it flips the script of the fight. Previously, Mahito was getting beaten in raw power and relied on his survivability and tricks to keep up in the fight, but now that he's landed Black Flash and gotten in the zone, he immediately presses his advantage and tables the turns. In contrast to before, he's now beating Shigaraki in raw power, but Shigi manages to keep up thanks to his survivability. While I do wish Shigaraki got to land a more impactful hit in his defense form, I think it's made up for by the raw as fuck move of regenerating his arm around Mahito's to trap him into decay, forcing Mahito to open his domain. It's so cool. On that domain though, I'm really glad they made this the climax and not distorted killing. It makes for a far more tense and interesting ending. But while I really like this scene overall, it gets into the two other issues I have here. Firstly, I don't like how the idol transfiguration and Vestige interaction is done. They show Vestiges getting destroyed when Mahito couldn't have been using the ability, normal punches don't activate it, and his clone can't even use it on others. Additionally, destroying a Vestige is supposed to be a really big deal, and when a vestige of Shigaraki's is destroyed, it causes severe physical damage to him. But in the animation, you'd think it just does nothing since it shows no effect on him, which leads to the ability and especially the domain to feel very unimpactful. My second issue here is this bum who doesn't deserve to be named. Get him off my screen! Anyways, moving on, the death is what pretty much everyone expected it to be, and it works well. Mahito running away is very fitting, and I like that we see him go through multiple attempts to try and avoid decay. I also really like the shots of Shigaraki in front of the Crash's tree. What the fuck? I wrote Crash's tree. Oh my god. And I love how impactful the final decay is. Another props to Philip there. Now on to the post-analysis. I think most of it is fine. Shigaraki obviously stat stomps and Mahito is harder to kill, but the argument they make for Shigi resisting idol transfiguration is weird. They argue that due to Mahito not being able to target specific souls, Shigaraki's vestiges would essentially act as a buffer for his main soul. The problem here is that in Mahito's analysis, they state
Mahito's ability affected both souls in Yuji's body.
Given they support that Mahito affects multiple souls within a body, the idea of a buffer kind of falls apart here. There's definitely better arguments they could have made for him resisting the ability, it's blank. Furthermore, Mahito's domain is completely left out of the discussion, despite being an easy counter to the main argument given for Shiggy resisting idol transfiguration. Domain expansion is the main win con for Mahito in this debate, so seeing it go entirely unmentioned is pretty disappointing. That's all I'll say on the post-analysis, though. If you want a more in-depth coverage of my disagreements with the episode, then go to the video in the description. Oh yeah, and the next time is pretty cool, if only people would actually talk about it. Overall, I'll admit I've been pretty critical of this episode, but it's in a sort of tough love way. I love this matchup and naturally wanted the best for it, so I'm gonna be more critical of it than a typical episode. I don't want my criticism to make it seem like I dislike the episode, because I don't. It's the exact opposite. Excluding the new best episode in the entire series, Shigaraki vs. Mahito is easily my favorite of this new Death Battle era, and possibly in my top 10 episodes of the show. I obviously have my issues, but every Death Battle has flaws. What's important is that the episode gets right far more than it gets wrong. The analyses are visually incredible and cover the characters fantastically. Every shot in the animation looks amazing, the choreography is super smooth, the atmosphere is perfect, the dialogue is peak, the kill is great, the verdict is... Overall, this episode is just amazing and hopefully an indicator for the quality of the future Kickstarter matchups. As for a score, normally I'd give it a high 8.5, but my sheer bias here bumps it up to a strong 9 out of 10. Truly an incredible episode in all aspects. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next review.